Hey everyone, thanks for being part of a small group this week. My name is Dave. I'm the pastor of the high school community here at Untitled Chapter at our Kennet campus. Just glad that we have the chance to gather week in and week out in our small groups. And I have a question for you. When's the last time you were angry? And I mean like really angry. I can think of a time I was angry, and I'll be honest about it. It was when I was building Legos with my son. We'd spent a lot of time building a fire truck, and I thought it was super cool. Well, we finished it up late in the afternoon, but by early morning the next day, I found it in pieces on the floor of his bedroom. I was angry. I'm not saying I deserved to be angry, but I was angry. I mean, that's just the bottom line. And I was the kind of angry when, like, your chest kind of sucks in and your nostrils flare. Yeah, that kind of angry. Our passage for this week talks about God and his anger. Specifically, it says that God is slow to anger. Now, allow me to provide a bit of context. You see, we're looking at this passage where God discloses his personal name. So instead of calling him Mr. God, he says, nah, call me by my personal name, Yahweh. And Yahweh means I am, or I will be. And then Yahweh continues to describe himself. He says that he is the Lord, a God merciful and gracious, slow to anger and abounding in steadfast love and faithfulness, keeping steadfast love for thousands, forgiving iniquity and transgression and sin, but who will by no means clear the guilty, visiting the iniquity of the fathers on the children and the children's children, to the third and fourth generation. So, God is slow to anger. But the gods are angry. That's what I think of when I think of mythical gods from the past. They're angry and vengeful. And certainly there are some gods who have some semblance of a good reputation, but they all at some point lose their cool. So what does Yahweh mean when he says that he's slow to anger? Well, the Hebrew words for slow to anger literally translate to mean long of nostril. Weird, right? But when you think about it, when you're really angry, what happens? You flare your nostrils. And so this phrase, long in nostril or slow to anger, is used a few times in ancient wisdom literature. Proverbs 14:29 says, "Whoever is slow to anger has great understanding, but he who has a hasty temper exalts folly." Proverbs 16:32 says, "Whoever is slow to anger is better than the mighty, and he who rules his spirit than he who takes a city." Did you catch that phrase? Rules his spirit. This is what we call self-control. And it's important that we notice this. It doesn't say that a self-controlled person lacks feelings, but that they are under control. And in Proverbs 14, we notice something similar. Someone who is slow to anger is not quick-tempered. It doesn't mean that, you lack reason for being upset, but that you have it all under control. So what does this mean about who Yahweh is? Well, it means that he can feel anger, but he's slow to do so. I love what John Mark Comer, the author of the text that's actually guiding this study, I love what he says. He says, unlike the other gods, Yahweh doesn't have a temper. He's not volatile or edgy or spasmodic. He doesn't fly off the handle or slam the door and storm out of the house in the God version of a temper tantrum. God is slow to anger. And that should come as a relief to us, especially because we do a bunch of things that make him angry. Yet while we do those things, he's still slow to anger. People want to think of God as this divine figure who ignores our wrongdoings, but that isn't God. He does genuinely get angry, but his anger is different. It's different than ours. The difference I want to focus on for the next couple of minutes is this idea of pace. You see, God doesn't suddenly get angry and just go nuts, go off the rails, but we do. we can be short-tempered, out of control, and ready to rage, even if it's over Legos. All of the rage that's inside of us, all of the anger, it's the result of turmoil within us and a sense that life is out of control. But God is never a victim. He's never out of control, and he doesn't rage. But he does get angry. What prompts his anger can be boiled down to one word: sin. Sin, it's any failure to conform to the moral law of God in act, attitude, or nature. In other words, to act differently than God desires for you to act. So sin is doing the opposite of what God wants you to do. So we sin when we act other than the way God wants us to. And we are quick to sin. But God is slow to anger. And why should we care if God is slow to anger? It means that he's patient, and it reinforces this idea that God actually cares about us. Think of someone in your life who isn't gracious. Who are they? Maybe it's a parent or a teacher or a coach, but someone isn't gracious towards you when you fail. That really hurts. What we learn about God in these couple of words is that he's slow to anger. That means he's patient. That means he takes a journey with you. That doesn't mean that he's accepting of our sin or that he tolerates our sin. We have to remember that patience is not the same as acceptance or tolerance. In fact, God doesn't accept or tolerate sin. And in the life of Jesus, we see this lived out. You see, Jesus spends 33 years on this earth living and loving. In his final 3 years of life, though, he goes throughout the region sharing the gospel, the good news of hope. But a moment arises when the anger of Jesus is unavoidable. In the Gospel of John, chapter 2, verses 13 to 17, they tell this story. And the long and short of it is that Jesus enters the temple in Jerusalem, the sacred temple for the people of Israel, and finds that people are selling items inside of the temple. At this point, Jesus has had it. He begins flipping tables and telling all of these salesmen to leave. But why does Jesus do this? He does this because of love. He does this because he loves the Father, Yahweh, and he knows that this is not what Yahweh wanted for the temple, the sacred place of worship. He does it because he loves the people, and he longs for them to understand that they are loved by God and that they are to love God alone. Love and anger commingled. We see this in God. We see this in Yahweh. It's true and it's possible. You see, I love my kids, but even at their young age, they disobey. And sometimes I have to love them by allowing them to know that I'm angry. But what am I angry at? I'm angry at the action, at the person for doing it, and for the fact that it's happened within my family. God gets the same kind of angry. When we disobey Yahweh, he feels anger for the same three reasons. Anger at what happened, anger at us for doing it, and anger that the opportunity and desire even exist in the world. But I deal with my children in the way that I do because I love them. I believe that they're capable of better, that they're destined for better, and that they're responsible to be better. And God feels the same thing for you. He believes that you're capable of living and loving the way that he does. He knows that he's destined you for that, and he knows that he's given you that opportunity to steward. And so he addresses us, yes, with anger, but from love. And that's why it's so important that we note the difference between our anger and God's anger. Our anger can get commingled with our pain, our selfishness, our trauma. But God's anger is rooted in love. It's pure. And that's why, ultimately, when we're quick to anger, he's slow to anger. Because even his anger is rooted in love. And so, yes, God gets angry. Yahweh gets angry, but the source of his anger is love for us. And that's why he deals with us differently. You may not want to deal with God because he gets angry. Maybe you think he's so angry with you that he doesn't want to deal with you. Maybe you think your wrongdoings are just too wrong. They aren't too wrong. Yes, they're wrong enough to anger God, but God forgives and approaches us with his love. He's always loved us, even when we've angered him. So bring your imperfections to the loving arms of God. The God who is slow to anger and who, we'll discover soon, is full of committed love for us.